Lord David Frost, really excited about this interview. I think you're a very interesting character. Let's start with your start in life. You got a free place at a private school in Nottingham, so you were clearly smart. What did your mum and dad do?
So I was brought up in Derby and went to school in Nottingham. My parents both worked at Rolls-Royce in Derby. They did their sort of bit part as designers of aero engines as draftsmen. So that's what they did. And Rolls-Royce has been a part of my life, I suppose, ever since then. And
you get to Oxford University. At any point, either at school or at Oxford, imposter syndrome? Did you ever experience imposter syndrome?
Gosh, no, I don't think so. I mean, everybody, wonders. I think if they're honest, wonders if they're up to the next challenge that meets them. I think that's just human nature. But I'd always felt that I would go to Oxford, and I was delighted to get there, and pleased about it. Yeah. So.
And did you get involved in student politics at Oxford?
I did a bit. I've always been interested in politics, actually, ever since kind of primary school almost.
Really?
And
did you always want to be a politician from a very young age?
I always thought I might go into politics. I thought it wasn't like what I was determined to do, but I was always interested in it. And certainly when I went to university, I got involved. I was involved in the Labour Party then.
What?
In fact, when I was at university.
You were a member
for
of the Labour Party?
Afterwards, I was a member of the
Labour Party. You were a member of the Labour Party?
Yeah, absolutely.
In your teenage years?
Teens and early 20s, yeah.
Really? My goodness.
And obviously I then went into the civil service, so proper politics had to stop.
Yeah, of course. So who would have been the leader there? What inspired you to join the Labour Party when you were in your teens at university?
So I thought, I was wrong in it, I think, but I thought at the time that the Labour Party was the party that stood up for ordinary voters, people who wanted their lives to be better, wanted things to change, wanted to kind of get on in life and make themselves, their families better off, be able to travel, be able to do all the things that makes a good life. And I thought the Labour Party was the party that stood up for people like that. And I have changed my mind about that. And I'm not sure it was even true in the 80s and early 90s when I was involved, but I certainly think it's not true now.
Were you on the left of the Labour Party, centrist, or were these things that you just thought you were Labour emotionally at some point then?
Yeah, I not left, not right. Just it was a bit of a family thing as well. My parents were both Labour Party voters at the time, and that was part of how I'd been brought up, I suppose. For those sort of values, I guess, was what was important to me, and I think they still are.
So when did you decide that actually you weren't Labour and you were a Conservative?
I think it was a gradual realisation, to be honest, partly being in the civil service, becoming quite Eurosceptic about what I saw in Brussels in the 90s. That was a big part of it. But I think more importantly, I began to realise, and I believe very strongly now, that the Labour Party is not the party of ordinary voters. It's the party of the sort of public sector classes, the people who like to decide how the country is run and like telling other people what to do. And those were the classes that were defeated in the 2016 referendum. That was a vote for change and doing things differently. And I think that's what the Conservative Party now stands for. Something very interesting has happened in politics in the last 5 years, which is that for the first time ever, I think, since the foundation of the Labour Party, the richer you are, the more likely you are to vote Labour. And that says a lot. Conservative Party's got to accept that, deal with it, and become fully the party of change, doing things differently for ordinary voters. And that's what I think is so important.
Interesting. Because I think if you ask most, I don't disagree with your analysis, but I think if you ask most Labour MPs why they went into politics, why they joined the Labour Party, they would say to represent working class people. Is that why you're in politics? Is it to represent working class people?
I think to the extent I'm in politics, I'm in it because I want to do what I can to make people's lives better. And I think that means, allowing people more freedom, doing what we can to make them better off, widening the horizons of what you can do with your life, feeling part of a community. Those, to me, are the things that people haven't felt they've been getting in recent years.
But you've been in power for 30.
Well, of course, that is true.
Yeah.
I think the referendum was a break point. Things changed at the referendum. We now need to deliver on that vote for change for ordinary voters around the country. And if you look at who voted for us in 2019, that is very different. That coalition is the future of the Conservative Party. We've got to accept that.
So you went into the civil service, you had some big jobs, you've had some big political jobs. You're now in the House of Lords, you're in the Cabinet from the Lords under Boris Johnson. You've never, though, taken elected office.
No.
Is that about to change? We're going to see you on the green benches?
Well, that's in the hands of the electorate, obviously, ultimately, and also in the hands of the Conservative Party to select me for a seat. So I am on the candidates list now, as I think is known, and I haven't applied for any seats yet, but I might in the year to come. So we'll see. And I think that although the House of Lords is great in its own way, real politics happens in the Commons. That's where the crucible of the national life is. And I think if you want to be in politics, that's where you've got to be, really.
I'll let you into a secret. So I was saying to one of my friends in the Labour Party who is an MP, and this was a couple of months ago actually, I was like, what's if, lots of big ifs, if the Tories lose power, who do you think they'll go for? And she said, I reckon it'll be David Frost.
It's nice of people to say that. I don't think it's likely to happen. The reason, as I said, the reason I want to go into the Commons is that's where politics is. That's where you need to be if you want to influence things, and that's the way our system works, and quite right too. I think people who are not elected don't have the same standing and the same rights to comment. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. Let's
talk briefly about your time in the civil service. We hear suggestions that there is a blob, that there is some sort of institutional block to people who are trying to pursue an agenda like yours, pro-tax cuts, pro-tough on immigration, pro-growth. Did you see any evidence of resistance in the civil service of what you wanted to do?
Well, I do think the civil service has changed. When I first joined the Foreign Office in the late 80s, it was there was a very strong esprit de corps. It was a bit like joining the military, I think, obviously not entirely, but it was a bit like, you stayed, you got the job done, you did what your political masters wanted, you got on with it. And that has gradually changed over the years. So that I think the civil service has come to think of itself as a sort of independent guardian of the constitution, if you like, in some ways, of kind of neutral ways of doing things. And I think that's a bit at the root of the conflicts that we've had over Brexit. So it's not that there's a blob opposing it. I think it's just that the civil service largely, not entirely, obviously, has come to think of itself as representing the middle ground in the country, and they push back a bit against people who want things to change.
What's wrong with the middle ground in the country?
Well, I think people vote. The 2016 referendum was a vote for things to be different. And that showed that the middle ground was not where a lot of the politicians thought where the middle ground was. And we have not delivered quite on the change that people wanted, I think, in the way that the country's run. So, changing things, doing things differently, shaking up old ways, that's the civil service is always going to feel a bit uncomfortable with that. But it's the job of ministers collectively to push things through and be determined and be clear about what they want. And that's what needs to happen.
You're often referred to as sort of the darling of the Conservative members of the right of the party. Is that a label that you accept? Why do you think you are referred to in that way? How are you the darling of Conservative members?
I don't know about that. I'm sure there are quite a lot of Conservative members who have mixed feelings about me. But to the extent that I do strike a chord in what I say. I think it's about. I think I speak for what a lot of Conservative members actually think. They do want the country to be different. They do want it to be more free market. They do want taxes to be lower. They want us to stand up for certain things. And maybe they're not hearing that as much as they would like from many of the leading Conservative politicians at the moment. And I guess I speak to that. I'm not the only one, but I certainly do, I think.
Do you think they care about culture war issues?
I do. I think the Conservative Party in the country feels very strongly about it. It feels very strongly about a number of things, actually, but it definitely feels strongly that it doesn't like, I think, the idea that we've developed this sort of almost state ideology around diversity, and to be in certain jobs or do certain things or hold certain positions, you've kind of got to pay lip service to this ideology. And I think it's not that every member of the Conservative Party is hostile to that. It's just that they think, why should you have to sign up for it? There should be freedom. You should be able to say what you think. We should be able to debate these things. Debate shouldn't be closed off. And that's a bit how it feels at the moment. And I believe in freedom, free speech, saying what you think. That's really important.
And you've said that those sort of values are not necessarily shouted loudly enough by some of the figures in the Conservative leadership. Who are your star players on the Conservative right?
Gosh, I think people like Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, are very strong cabinet ministers, set out a very clear view of the way forward in various areas. But I think many cabinet ministers are doing good things. I think, but what worries me is that there's a sense of drift, a sense that the country's got a lot of problems and they're a bit too big to be tackled, and so we're just going to carry along in a kind of steady as she goes way. And I think the genius of the Conservative Party historically has been not to give in to that, but to be able to face up to the challenges the country has and to grip them and deal with them. And we're going to have to do that again because this country's got a lot of problems and we've got to deal with them.
Do you have a best friend in politics? Is there such a friend? Can you have friends in politics, like real ones?
I hesitate because I came into politics in this rather unusual way. Yeah. I didn't kind of bond with other MPs as you do if you're elected. I was suddenly projected into it, and I guess I still do consider Boris a friend. Actually, we think in very similar ways about things, and I think he's very decent guy who's been much maligned, but but obviously I have friends, but I haven't sort of bonded with anybody in the way that I think others do.
We look forward to seeing your progress. I mean, sounds like it's going to be a future on the green benches, and you're going to have a big influential role in the future of your party when you are there. Are you looking forward to that?
Well, if it happens, I'll be looking forward to it. If it doesn't happen, and as I say, it's in the hand of the electorate, that's what's coming. I still hope to contribute to the debate. Freedom, growth, standing up for the country, that's what people want to hear, and that's what I will carry on saying.
Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather when you said you used to be a member of the Labour Party. Thank you very much indeed. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Lord Frost.